there, everyone. Okay, so in an earlier video, we made our color wheel, which really wasn't about the document itself. It was more about building the wheel on our palette, learning about how far the paint will go, how quickly it is that you can shift a color with a tiny bit of paint. Then we went and built a value scale and mixed in just tints to make a pure hue down to a lighter value by adding white and in progressions. And then we did shades and tones and shades by adding those to a value scale, and then we ombreed it by doing some cross hatching. Now we're going to learn about desaturating colors with our complements. So complementary colors, as discussed in the video when we talked about color theory, are opposites on the color wheel. So green is opposite of red, yellow is opposite of violet, and blue is opposite of orange. So I have it written on here that we're going to do a red-green one, but if you'd like to try one of the other complements, like a blue-orange split or a yellow-violet split, you can. But I'll stick to the red and green. So here I have my leftover paint from when I did the tints, tones, and shades ombre. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and stay organized, and I'm just going to scrape this paint back and save it for later. I sprayed this down with water before I finished my last session. And I'll just kind of push this over to the side so I still have it, or I could make a little painting study with it. I'm just going to kind of scooch this over and save it for later. And then I'm going to wipe this down so I can use this center area for mixing. Since I'm going to do the red-green split, I'm going to build a new green so that I have a clean one to work from. So remember, we want to do light colors first. I might do a little more. That's my Posca marker where I had a Y for yellow is kind of picking up into my paint, which is okay. So I'm going to grab a little more yellow, wipe off my knife, having that good practice of keeping my outer colors not messy. And then we had learned earlier that our blue had a pretty intense tinting strength, so I'm just going to use a mini chocolate chip's worth and mix that in and make a new green. Oh, that's pretty. Okay, and then I'll start. So what it says on the document is to create a red value scale with tints, tones, and shades, and a green value with tints, tones, and shades. So I'm going to try and do this pretty quickly, and I'm gonna wipe this up so I can make a little more room too. I'm going to start with my 100 red, and then I'm just going to do a mini chocolate chip plus a little more, and then I'll do a little less. So this would be my 100, my 70, my 50, my 30, and then my 0. So just barely, not very much. And then I'll come in with my white. I think I had mentioned in another video that I was starting to run out of my basics white, so I just switched to another inexpensive Master's Touch brand. And then again, 100, 70, 50, 30, 0. And I will try to make my scale. I'm going to add more red to that, but I'm going to shift down. That'll be my 50. I like that. Add a little more red to this. Gonna need some more. What this is proving to me right now is that my tinting strength of my white is more assertive than my red. So I keep putting mini chocolate chips worth in. Do even more. I'm totally contaminating my red. Oops. Okay, and then this will be my 30. And this won't be quite a white 0 because it's going to have some pigment in it, but we'll make it a really pale pink. Okay, and then I'll quickly make my tint tones and shaded value scale. So I'll start with my red here. I'm going to just keep that in there as my mother color, mix in to my 70, blot that off, mix into my lighter value, mix that off, mix that into my 30, and then my lighter value. I'm going to scrape this off and then I'm going to put some white at the top. I have a lot of paint in there. Rinse my brush, dry it off. And then you can keep it a strong value step, or you can do the ombre mixing if you want. And that's how we make those value scales that can create a sense of depth. Okay, there's my white added to my red. And I'm going to do the same with my green. So I'm going to come over here. Use this one. Okay, same thing real quick. So this will be my darker green here, a little less, even less, and the least amount. Adding the white. I'm just doing the tints here and not using the grays. And blacks. But you can add those too. What we're going to do instead is we're going to desaturate. I'll show you what I mean. So even more white. And then the most white. Like a really soft, pale green. And basically what we're gonna make right here is this again, but we'll have it there as a comparison so you can see what happens when we desaturate. So I'll start with the solid green. And then the next one. And the next one. So you can see me kind of like building this ombre almost on my palette, using that mother color in the brush. And then my light one. And I'll scrape that out and use the white at the top. And I am gonna ombre mine. I think I have too much white in my brush, so I'm going to squish that off. Add a little darker green at the bottom. And then you've got your scale. Okay, so this is where it gets really fun, where we're going to show you how the desaturation works. So the trick here is you're not trying to change this from green. You're almost going to try and turn it into gray. So how we do that is we're going to use like a salt grain of paint at a time, barely at all. And you could work through the value scale side by side, or I'm going to try and do it with just the pure red. So I'm going to take like literally like the tiniest bit of red, maybe a little more, just barely. And I'm going to add it to my green little bits at a time. Okay, so I could have used more. And you'll see this start to gray out. And I don't want it to turn pink. I just want it to kind of gray, desaturate. So the opposites pull the chroma out. So I'll do that to each value. And this is where people, when you start making paintings, things can turn really muddy really fast. So you have to be careful that you don't use too much. And it's not that we want to make browns, it's just that we want to make something that maybe looks more like the natural world. Most things in our world are not super high chroma. They're kind of dullish. So it might be more the color of like what a leaf would look like on a succulent, or like this color would almost be like the underlying base in my skin tone. And what'll be fun is that you'll be able to see this when we do them side by side, that they're not gross colors, they're just desaturated. And if you push too far, it'll turn kind of brownish. That's actually a really beautiful kind of olivey color. Rinse out my brush, and then I'll lay out that scale. I'll start with the darks. It says on here, this will make the colors look more like the world around us and less like candy. So you can see how pretty they are and not muddy. Again, you want to be real careful not to put too much of the opposite, because it'll start to really kind of pull them down, but like you're getting into this kind of like pretty beige, if you will. And the more tinting you add, the kind of softer, more delicate they look. Kind of cut those together. And you've got this more kind of naturalistic color palette that you would see in the world. So now we'll do it to the red. Same thing, we'll use the pure green hue. Just barely. And it makes them like softer, kind of peachy. People sometimes ask me, they'll be like, how do you make the color of skin? I'm like, well, how do you make all 500,000 colors of skin? This is how you do it. It's this desaturation that starts to become like humanity. I'm running out of green. I'm gonna use some of that one. And trying to keep your palette so that you're always having these kind of value scales. You can even see in our water what's happening where I'm putting the red and the green together. It's like desaturating out into a total neutral. There's a lot of tint in there, a lot of white. So instead of that bright kind of Tootsie Pop color, you have like a prettier kind of neutral pink. But then you still really using the value steps. Clean out my brush, add some white. Cut those together. So can you totally just go buy these colors at the art store? Of course, yes, can. But it's so fun to control it. And then even if you go on to be a digital artist, it helps to even just think about how colors can be this complicated to make them prettier as they go. So I think you can really see the difference between our straight hue plus tint, tone, and shade, or I'm sorry, just with tints. Then here it is desaturating with the complement, compared even to this one that we had done with just the black, white, and gray. So let me put this here. You can compare, this looks earthier than when you did it with just the Mars black. It becomes more complicated, they become really beautiful. It looks like nature, if you will. Okay, so we'll come back in the next video and we'll use our palette, whatever we have left, to do a couple chromatic mixing tests where we can use any of the color combinations that we want. And then we'll do one where we're just practicing painting a form. Okay, I'll be back in another video. See you in a sec.